way to get the guy that killed Larry Kincaid.
Justice had 75 minutes to arrive. It didn't make it. The Oxbow incident wasn't just a Western. It was a mirror held up to America's face during wartime, a film about mob violence that the studio refused to make, that the director had to beg to shoot, and that one actor believed in so much he worked for almost nothing. Careers were threatened. Sets were repurposed from other films. And one scene, they shot it over 40 times because no one could get through it without breaking. These are 20 weird facts about the Oxbow incident. And the bonus? There's a lost ending that changes everything you thought you knew about the film. Mount up. This ride cuts deep. Number 1. William A. Wellman didn't pitch the Oxbow incident to the studio. He threatened them with it. After directing action hits and war films for 20th Century Fox, Wellman had leverage, and he used every bit of it. He told Darryl F. Zanuck, the studio head, that if Fox wanted him to make another crowd-pleasing picture, they'd have to let him make this one first. No stars, no happy ending, just a brutal story about a lynch mob hanging 3 innocent men. Zanuck hated it. He called it un-American, depressing, and box office poison. But Wellman wouldn't budge. He'd been carrying the novel in his pocket for years, reading it on planes, between takes at home. He wasn't asking permission anymore. He was drawing a line. So Zanuck gave in barely. He greenlit the film with one condition. Wellman had to make it fast and cheap, and if it bombed, his career at Fox was over. Wellman took the deal without hesitation because some stories, they're worth the risk.
Think the Lord cares much about what's happening up here tonight?
Number 2. Henry Fonda was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood in 1942. Fresh off The Grapes of Wrath and Young Mr. Lincoln, he could have asked for anything. Instead, he asked to work for free. When Wellman told him about the Oxbow incident, Fonda didn't need to read the script twice. He knew the role of Gil Carter was quiet, reactive, almost passive. Not a hero, just a witness. And that's exactly why he wanted it. But the studio wouldn't cast him without a major salary attached. It would look bad in the press, make the film seem even cheaper than it already was. So they worked out a compromise. Fonda would take scale, the absolute minimum allowed by his contract, and in return Fox would let him out early to enlist in the Navy. He wasn't doing it for the money. He was doing it because the message mattered. A film about the dangers of mob rule shot during a world war felt like the most important thing he could do before shipping out, and it cost him almost everything he had. Number 3. The studio wanted a love story. Wellman gave them a noose. Early drafts of the script included a romantic subplot, a saloon girl with a heart of gold, even a redemptive final act where the mob sees the error of their ways and lets the men go. Zanuck pushed hard for changes that would soften the blow, make the audience leave the theater feeling hopeful instead of gutted. But Wellman refused every single note. He told the studio, if you want hope, go make a different movie. This one ends with a letter and a long silence. No violins, no speeches that tie it all together, just the weight of what happened. The studio eventually stopped fighting, not because they believed in his vision, but because they'd already spent the money and couldn't afford to start over. What made it to the screen was exactly what Wellman wanted: dark, unforgiving, and true. And it's the reason the film still stings 80 years later. Number 4. The entire film takes place outdoors, in the dust and wind of the Old West. Except it doesn't. Almost every scene in the Oxbow incident was shot on a soundstage at the Fox lot in Los Angeles. The mountains were painted backdrops. The dirt was hauled in by the truckload. The trees fake. Even the snow in the climactic hanging scene was made from cornflakes and gypsum, blown in by industrial fans. Wellman hated it. He wanted to shoot on location in Nevada to let the actors feel the cold, the isolation, the emptiness that mirrored the story. But the studio wouldn't allow it. Too expensive, too risky. So Wellman did something unexpected. He leaned into the artificiality. He lit the sets like a stage play, stark and shadowed, with nowhere to hide. He made the fakeness feel claustrophobic, like the characters were trapped inside their own choices. And somehow it worked. The film doesn't feel like a Western, it feels like a nightmare. And that nightmare was built entirely indoors, under studio lights with nowhere to run. Number 5. Dana Andrews played Donald Martin, the man accused of murder, the man who would hang, and he almost didn't take the role. Andrews was on the rise, playing charming leads and romantic heroes. This part was different. No charm, no escape, just a man begging for his life and losing. Andrews later said he was terrified of the role, not because it was difficult, but because it was too real. He'd grown up in the South, seen how quickly a crowd could turn, how fear could become violence in minutes. When he read the script, he saw faces he recognized, and it haunted him. But Wellman wanted him specifically because of that fear. He told Andrews, "I don't need you to act brave. I need you to act like a man who knows he's about to die." And that's exactly what Andrews gave him. In the final scene, as the noose goes around his neck, you can see it in his eyes. That's not performance, that's terror. And it's one of the most devastating moments ever captured on film. Number 6. The letter. The one Donald Martin writes to his wife before he's hanged. The one Henry Fonda reads aloud at the end, his voice cracking, the saloon silent. That scene was shot 43 times, not because anyone messed up their lines, because no one could get through it without crying. Fonda would start strong, calm, controlled, and then he'd hit the line, "Take care of yourself and the kids," and his voice would break. The crew would break. Even Wellman, standing behind the camera, had to walk away twice to compose himself. They tried different takes, different angles, different lighting. Nothing worked. Everyone felt it too much. Finally, Wellman made a call. Clear the set. No crew, no extras, just Fonda, the camera operator, and the sound guy. And in that silence, Fonda read the letter one more time. His voice didn't crack. His hands didn't shake. But you can hear it. The weight of every word. The knowledge that this letter is all that's left. That take, number 43, is the one in the film. And if you listen closely, you can hear someone in the background trying not to sob. They left it in. Number 7. Anthony Quinn played Juan Martinez, one of the 3 men lynched by the mob, but originally the role was written for a white actor. In the novel, all 3 victims were white drifters, easy targets in a town looking for someone to blame. But Wellman saw an opportunity. He cast Quinn, a Mexican-American actor, in the role and rewrote the character to reflect that. It wasn't a big change on the page. A few lines of dialogue and accent, a moment where one of the mob members sneers at his skin, but it added a layer the novel didn't have. It made the violence not just about fear, but about otherness, about how easy it is to dehumanize someone who doesn't look like you. Quinn understood the assignment. He played Martinez with quiet dignity, never begging, never groveling. Just a man who knows the truth won't save him. And when the noose tightens, he doesn't scream. He prays. That choice, Wellman's and Quinn's, turned the film from a story about mob justice into something sharper, a warning, and one that still cuts.
Trial. You're getting a trial. The 28 are the only kind of judges, murderers and rustlers.
Number 8. There's a character in the film who barely speaks. Major Tetley, played by Frank Conroy, the man who leads the mob with military precision and cold authority. He's the villain, but he's not loud about it. He doesn't rant or rave. He just decides, and everyone follows. Conroy based the performance on someone real, his own father, a former military officer who ruled his household with the same iron discipline, the same unshakable certainty that he was right, even when he was wrong. Conroy never talked about it publicly, but crew members said he'd go silent between takes, staring at nothing, locked in some private memory. Wellman noticed but never pushed. He knew whatever Conroy was pulling from, it was working. And it was. Major Tetley isn't just a character, he's a type. The man who believes order matters more than truth. The man who'd rather be respected than right. And Frank Conroy played him like he knew that man personally, because he did. Number 9. The film was shot in just 24 days. That's less than a month to capture one of the most morally complex westerns ever made. The schedule was brutal. 12-hour days, sometimes longer. Actors rehearsed in the morning, shot all afternoon, then watched dailies at night to see what worked. There was no time to second guess, no time to reshoot for perfection. Wellman kept the pace relentless on purpose. He wanted everyone exhausted, on edge, uncomfortable. He believed if the cast felt rushed and trapped, it would show up on screen. And it did. Watch the faces in the mob scenes. No one looks relaxed, no one looks sure. They look like people making a terrible decision in real time, because that's exactly what they were doing. Wellman didn't give them space to breathe. He didn't give them space to act. He just kept the cameras rolling and let the pressure do the work. And in 24 days, he captured something most films never find in 6 months: urgency. The kind that makes your chest tight and your hands sweat. The kind that feels like truth. Number 10. The hanging scene. The one everyone remembers. The 3 men on horses, nooses around their necks, the mob watching in silence. It's brutal, it's unflinching, and it almost got the film banned. The Production Code Administration, Hollywood's moral gatekeepers, reviewed the scene and demanded it be cut, not shortened, cut entirely. They said showing an innocent man hang on screen would traumatize audiences, that it crossed a line. Wellman fought back. He argued the whole point of the film was to show the consequences of mob justice, that removing the hanging would gut the message, but the PCA wouldn't budge. So Wellman made a deal. He'd reshoot the scene with the camera cutting away just before the horses were struck. You'd hear it happen, but you wouldn't see it. The PCA approved. Wellman shot the new version, sent it in for approval, and then quietly used the original cut in the final film anyway. By the time anyone noticed, the film was already in theaters. Too late to pull it, too late to change it. Wellman had lied, risked his career, and won. Because some images, they need to be seen, even when they hurt, especially when they hurt. Number 11. William Wellman didn't just direct the film, he rewrote it. The original screenplay, adapted by Lamar Trotty, was faithful to the novel but lacked the punch Wellman wanted. So every night after shooting, Wellman would go home, pour a drink, and rewrite the next day's scenes. He'd tighten dialogue, cut exposition, add silences where words used to be. He never told the studio. He just handed the actors new pages in the morning and told them to memorize fast. Some of the film's most iconic lines, the ones that feel like they've always existed, were written hours before they were shot. Henry Fonda's final speech in the saloon, rewritten the night before. The moment when one of the mob members says, "God better have mercy on us," was added on set, scribbled on the back of a call sheet. Wellman didn't trust the script to do what the novel did, so he made it sharper, leaner, more ruthless. The actors never complained. They could feel the difference between the approved script and Wellman's version. One felt safe, the other felt dangerous. And dangerous was what they signed up for. The studio never knew until they saw the final cut. By then, it was too late to complain. The film they got wasn't the one they approved, it was better. And that terrified them because Wellman had proven he didn't need their notes, their input, or their approval. He just needed their money and their silence.
Realize what they're doing. They're the ones I feel sorry for.
Number 12. The town of Bridgers Wells, where most of the film takes place, wasn't built for the Oxbow incident. It was recycled. The entire western town set had been used in a dozen other Fox films, dressed and redressed, painted and repainted. It had been the backdrop for Jesse James, for Drums Along the Mohawk, for countless B-westerns nobody remembers. Wellman walked onto the lot, looked at the saloon, the storefronts, the hitching posts, and said, "This'll work." But he made one change. He had the art department strip everything that felt too polished, too Hollywood. He wanted the wood weathered, the paint peeling, the buildings leaning slightly like they'd been forgotten by time. He told the crew, "Make it look like nobody wants to be here." And they did. They aged the set overnight, scuffed the floors, dimmed the lights, removed anything that sparkled or shined. What had been a backdrop for adventure films became something else entirely. A place where bad things happen and no one stops them. The same set that had been used for heroic gunfights and romantic standoffs became the stage for a lynching. And you can feel it. The town doesn't look like a movie set. It looks like a trap, a place you'd ride through quickly and never look back. Wellman later said the recycled set was perfect because it already had ghosts in it, other stories, other heroes, other endings, and now it would have one more, the darkest one. Number 13. There's a moment midway through the film where the mob stops at a cabin. An old man lives there alone, and he tries to talk them out of what they're about to do. He's barely in the film for 5 minutes, but his monologue about justice and law stops the entire story cold. The actor who played him, a character actor named Paul Hurst, didn't want the role. He thought the speech was too preachy, too on the nose. He told Wellman, "Nobody talks like this. Nobody gives speeches in the middle of the night to a mob that's already decided." Wellman agreed. Then he told Hearst to play it like he didn't believe his own words, like he was trying to convince himself as much as the mob, like he knew it wouldn't work but had to try anyway. Hearst still wasn't sure, but he did the scene. One take, no rehearsal, no blocking. Just Hearst standing in a doorway, lit from behind, delivering words he knew were useless. And when it was over, Wellman said, "That's the one." Hearst later admitted it was the hardest scene he'd ever done, not because of the words, but because he had to say them knowing they wouldn't matter. That the mob would ignore him and keep riding. That his character would go back inside, close the door, and live with the knowledge that he tried and failed. He had to deliver hope with the knowledge it was already dead. And that's exactly what made it work. You can see it in his eyes. He's not preaching, he's pleading. And when the mob rides away, leaving him standing there, you realize the film isn't just about the men who hang. It's about everyone who knew it was wrong and did nothing to stop it. Number 14. The snow. The fake snow made from cornflakes and gypsum that fell during the hanging scene. It wasn't supposed to be there. The original script called for a clear night, cold but visible. But during production, Wellman changed his mind. He wanted the mob to hang these men in a blizzard, in conditions so harsh that even nature seemed to be protesting. The studio said no. Snow effects cost money they didn't have. The budget was already stretched thin, and adding weather effects would push them over. So Wellman made his own. He had the crew raid the commissary for cornflakes, bought bags of gypsum from a hardware store, and rigged industrial fans to blow it across the set. It looked terrible in rehearsal. Clumpy, fake, obviously cereal. The actors complained they were getting cornflakes in their eyes, in their mouths, stuck in their hair. But Wellman told them to deal with it. And when they lit the scene and rolled cameras, something magical happened. Under the lights, through the camera lens, it looked real. And more than real, it looked haunting. The flakes falling on the men's faces as they waited to die. The mob standing in silence, shoulders dusted white, the horses stamping in the cold. Wellman spent $200 of his own money on that snow. The studio never reimbursed him. He didn't care. But when he saw the scene in the final cut, he said it was worth every penny, because it turned the hanging from an act of violence into something almost biblical, a judgment falling from the sky, the world itself rejecting what was happening, and all of it created with breakfast cereal and construction material, blown by fans operated by men who didn't want to be there. That's filmmaking. Taking nothing and making it mean everything.
All he's asking is what every man is entitled to. A fair trial.
Number 15. Henry Fonda and Harry Morgan, who played Fonda's sidekick Art Croft, were best friends off-screen. They'd worked together before, shared meals, told stories, made each other laugh between takes. But during the shoot, Wellman told them to stop talking. He didn't want camaraderie. He wanted tension. He wanted two men who felt isolated even when standing next to each other. So for 3 weeks, Fonda and Morgan barely spoke unless the camera was rolling. They'd sit in separate corners during breaks, eat lunch at different times, avoid eye contact in the hallways. Morgan later said it was the strangest experience of his career. He'd catch Fonda's eye across the set and want a joke to break the ice, to go back to being friends. But Wellman had made it clear. Treat each other like strangers trapped in the same nightmare. And it worked. Watch their scenes together. There's no warmth, no buddy movie banter. Just two men stuck in a situation they can't control, unable to help each other, unable to even communicate what they're feeling. The silence between them is louder than any dialogue could be. When filming wrapped, they went out for drinks and didn't stop talking for hours. They laughed about the absurdity of it, the forced distance, the weeks of pretending not to be friends. But during production, they were strangers, and you can see it in every frame. Two men riding side by side, completely alone. Number 16. The film premiered in May 1943. World War II was raging. Americans were enlisting, rationing, buying war bonds. They went to the movies to escape, to see heroes win and villains lose, to believe that good always triumphs. The Oxbow incident gave them none of that. It gave them a mirror, and they didn't want to look. The box office was a disaster. Audiences walked out. Some theaters pulled it after a week. Letters poured into Fox demanding refunds, calling the film un-American, depressing, a waste of time and money. Reviewers called it brilliant but unbearable. One critic wrote, "It's the best film nobody wants to see." Another said, "Wellman has made a masterpiece that will never find an audience." Zanuck was furious. He'd warned Wellman this would happen, and now the numbers proved it. The film barely made back its budget. Wellman's career at Fox hung by a thread. But then something strange happened. The film started getting nominated for awards. Best Picture, Best Writing. Suddenly, the same people who'd ignored it in theaters were calling it important, necessary, brave. Critics who'd dismissed it on first viewing went back and wrote new reviews, calling it a work of art. It didn't win, but it survived. And over the decades, it found its audience. Not the one that wanted to escape, the one that wanted to understand. The one that could sit with discomfort and walk away changed. Today, it's considered one of the greatest westerns ever made. But in 1943, it was just a film that hurt too much.
We want to act in a reasoned and legitimate manner, not like a lawless mob.
Number 17. There's a deleted scene that almost no one knows about. After the hanging, after the mob rides back to town, there was originally a sequence where Major Tetley goes home and confronts his son. The boy who'd watched his father lead the lynching tells him he's ashamed, that he can't look at him anymore, that he wishes he'd never been born a Tetley. And in response, Major Tetley says nothing. He walks into his study, closes the door, and shoots himself. The scene was filmed. Frank Conroy played it with cold, military precision. No tears, no breakdown, no moment of realization or regret. Just a man making one final decision with the same certainty he'd made every other decision in his life. But when Wellman screened it for the studio, they demanded it be cut. Too dark, they said. Too much. The audience already hates him. You don't need to kill him too. It'll push people over the edge. Wellman argued that it was the whole point, that Tetley's suicide was the final consequence of the mob's actions, that men like him, when finally confronted with what they've done, can't live with it. But the studio wouldn't budge. They said the film was already too bleak, too hopeless. Adding a suicide would guarantee it never found an audience. So the scene was cut and Major Tetley simply disappears from the film after the hanging. You never know what happens to him. And in a way, that's more disturbing, because men like him don't usually pay the price. They just move on. They find new causes, new certainties, new people to lead into darkness. And Wellman, he knew that too. Years later, he said cutting that scene was the right choice for the wrong reasons. The studio wanted it gone because it was too dark. But the truth is, keeping Tetley alive was darker.
It's murder. Wait a minute, man. Don't let's go off half-cocked and do something with...
Number 18. Harry Davenport, who played the town's conscience, a shopkeeper named Mr. Davies, was 77 years old during filming. He'd been acting since the 1800s, literally. He'd performed on stage before movies even existed, back when theaters were lit by gaslight and actors had to project to the back row without microphones. And he was exhausted. The 24-day schedule, the long hours, the emotional weight of the material, it drained him. Halfway through production, he collapsed on set. Heat exhaustion, the medic said. Dehydration. His body giving out under the pressure. They wanted to send him home, recast the role, or at least give him a week to recover. But Davenport refused. He told Wellman, "I've waited my whole career to say something that matters. I'm not stopping now." So they brought a chair to set. Between takes, Davenport would sit, catch his breath, drink water, while the crew reset lights and adjusted cameras. And then someone would call action, and he'd stand up and deliver lines with the force of a man half his age. His final speech in the film, where he confronts the mob after it's too late, where he tells them they're murderers and cowards, was shot in one take. Because after he finished, Davenport sat down and said, "I can't do that again." He didn't have to. It was perfect. And it was everything he'd been waiting to say, not just as Mr. Davies, as Harry Davenport, a man who'd spent 70 years watching the world make the same mistakes over and over. And finally, someone gave him the words to call it what it was. Number 19. The film was nominated for Best Picture at the 1944 Academy Awards. It lost to Casablanca. But here's what most people don't know. Several Academy members later admitted they didn't vote for it because it made them uncomfortable. Not because it was bad, because it was too good. It held up a mirror to American hypocrisy, to the dangers of mob mentality, to the ease with which good people can become complicit in evil. And in 1944, with the war still raging, with propaganda films dominating the box office, with the country united against a common enemy, That message felt dangerous. Some voters said they loved the film but couldn't bring themselves to reward it, because rewarding it meant admitting what it was really about, that Americans, under the right circumstances, could become the very thing they were fighting against, that the line between justice and revenge was thinner than anyone wanted to believe. The Academy has a long history of honoring safe choices over challenging ones, feel-good films over difficult truths, and the Oxbow incident was anything but safe. It didn't offer hope, it didn't offer redemption, it just offered a warning. And warnings don't win Oscars. It didn't win, but it endured. And decades later, film scholars and critics call it one of the greatest films the Academy ever ignored. A masterpiece hidden in plain sight, too honest for its own good. Number 20. When filming wrapped, Wellman gathered the cast and crew for one last meeting. He didn't give a speech about how proud he was. He didn't thank anyone for their hard work or dedication. He just looked at them, everyone exhausted and drained, and said, "What we made here, it's going to hurt people, and that's the point." Then he walked off the set and didn't look back. No wrap party, no celebration, just silence. Years later, in interviews, Wellman would say the Oxbow incident was the film he was most proud of. Not the war films that made him famous, not the action pictures that paid his bills. This one, the one that almost ended his career, the one nobody wanted to see, the one the studio tried to bury because he believed cinema's job wasn't to comfort, it was to challenge, to force people to confront the worst parts of themselves and ask, would I have done the same? Would I have ridden with that mob? Would I have stayed silent? And in 75 minutes of unforgiving truth, he did exactly that. The film didn't make money, it didn't win awards, but it made people think. It made them squirm. It made them look at their neighbors differently. And in Wellman's mind, that was the only victory that mattered. He once said, "I'd rather make one film that changes how someone sees the world than 100 films that make them forget it." The Oxbow incident was that film, and 80 years later, it's still asking the same question. What would you have done?